So briefly, before we begin, I see a lot of familiar faces and a couple faces that I haven't seen in other webinars. So I just want to just briefly, my name is Eva Clark. I'm a medical clinical hypnotherapist, and I have specialized in MS since 2013. About 4 years ago, a client of mine actually came to the office. She didn't have MS. She had what's called mast cell syndrome, which is a crazy disorder that you can even become allergic to water. And what was interesting is when she came to my session, came into my room, she was like cool. She came in, she's like, okay, these are the behaviors that I need to change, and these are the beliefs that are tripping me. And I just watched her and I was like, oh my gosh. So I saw her like empowered. I didn't see fear. She was clear what she wanted, right? And I thought, I want my clients to do this too. I want my clients to not have fear of what's going on, to feel like I know what I need to do and I know how I'm going to get that, and to have the clarity of what they need to do. So she told me that what she was doing was working with German new medicine. And so I got curious and I decided, okay, I was going to look and see what this German new medicine was. And I found that it really simplified my own practice and my own work. It made it even clearer for myself and for my clients. And so that's what I want to be sharing today because it made it clear not just what's happening in your body, but also what's happening in your brain. And I think for MS, that's a really important piece because the brain, the MRI is one of those key factors to get diagnosed, right? Um, so I'm here to share because I hope that even today's presentation will help release a lot of the fear you have, especially of MRIs, but hopefully also a little bit of MS, help you gain clarity and empowerment. So to start today, we're going to look at or talk about MRIs. To start, we're going to talk about how conventional medicine utilizes MRIs in MS. So many years ago in the 80s and even before 2001, in order to get diagnosed with MS, you needed to have certain kind of symptoms. So some sort of either paralysis and clumsiness or sensory issues. So either you had some sort of numbing or tingling or you had issues with the eyes. And then there needed to be indication of inflammation in the central nervous system to know, okay, it's a central nervous system disorder. So before they used to do lumbar punctures and they would just check for antibodies and that was all they needed. Then when MRI started coming out, they noticed that in the MRI, there were these white spots. So it was indicating there was some sort of edema, liquid in the brain, which is usually an indication of inflammation activity. It's like when you cut yourself, all the area inflames because there is liquid in that area. It is juicy so that your body comes in there to repair the cut. There was always the use of lumbar punctures officially until 2001. They did start using MRIs like in the 80s, but in 2001 it became official that you could just use those white spots as the indication of inflammation activity in the central nervous system. Okay, but let me ask you this. Can you have these kind of symptoms, the numbing and the tingling, or some kind of paralysis, and not have the spots or the antibodies and be diagnosed with MS? No, you want to have the two. If not, it's inconclusive. Now, the other question, can you have these lesions but not have the symptoms of paralysis or numbing and tingling? So brain lesions, those white spots that you have in your MRI are actually not exclusive of MS. 44% of people diagnosed with migraines have brain lesions. The general population, which means everybody, under the age of 50, I think is the study I looked at, 17.5%. And people over 60, of them have these brain lesions. Thus, the brain lesion by itself does not mean you have MS, okay? It also does not directly correlate with symptoms, and we're going to find that out. We're going to look at that in a little more detail. Okay, I love this image or this little video because we're going to really look at what's up with the MRIs. For one, do you guys see the little Christmas tree, how the little lesions seem to be popping like Christmas lights?
Yes.
Has anyone told you that this is possible?
No.
This is actually there was a study made, I think it was 2007, in which a group of people formerly diagnosed with MS had an MRI done every 2 weeks for a full year. So this is just a quick snapshot, the video of every 2 weeks. What's interesting about this one in particular is this one's a young man, I think he's in his 30s. During this entire year where his lesions are doing all sorts of wonky stuff, he had no new symptoms and no changes in his symptoms. So one of the limitations of MRIs is actually the inflammation that's detected can vary quite a lot moment to moment. So imagine, let's look at this one here. I don't know if you could see my mouse, the second one on the top right. What if the MRI was done right there, where this one's so big, right? What would happen? And what if it was then done the next year here, where there's no big, loud inflammation? Would someone conclude, oh, there's a big change in the MRI, correct? But it's not quite accurate because of these fluctuations moment to moment. Another thing about or limitation of MRIs is that all you see is these white spots. You cannot know for sure. There's like little tricks neurologists will do. It's like, oh, well, if it has a little black point in the middle, then that is an indication that it's probably. But the thing about these is you don't know if that big white spot is an active inflammation, it's a demyelination, it's maybe a remyelination, or it's a scar tissue. Not when it's just an image, which is what you receive when you go to the neurologist. You don't receive this panel every 2 weeks for a full year, right? So that's another thing that seeing the scar, seeing these white dots does not really clearly indicate what's going on and in what stage you are. Another thing about MRIs is they're really good for indicating changes in white matter. So we have gray matter and white matter in our brain. If you look again at this one top right, this outside area, this is what's called your gray matter. I always like to think about it as like a shower cap. It's up here and it goes down and around your brain. You actually can't see the activity in an MRI in this area because it doesn't get so inflamed. This area, interesting enough, is actually the area where your symptoms of motor nerves, so the ability to walk or something inside of you, keeping you from walking, and your sensory nerves, which is all the numbing and the tingling, reside. That's in this area. MRI cannot detect change there. MRI detects change in this center, this darker area, which is called white matter. Don't ask me, it should be opposite, but that's how the MRI sees it, right? So this area here, darker area, is the white matter, and that's what an MRI is good at detecting edemas and inflammation in. So the MRI is not showing everything that's going on, which leads to the conclusion that there isn't a direct correlation between these white matter lesions, that's what these are called, hypersensitivities, MS symptoms that you have, the most common ones, and the grade of disability. What I was talking about before, right? This is the motor nerves. This is the sensory nerves. It's on the outside of the brain, actually. And what they're cutting there is about here, the area where there's the most concentration of white matter. So In medicine, this has been known for decades. It's actually called the clinico-radiological paradox in MS. It's a lot of words. But what it's really saying is there is actually a very weak correlation between what's visible on an MRI, just the white matter changes, and what's actually happening in your body. You can have tons of these white lesions. I mean, think about it. MS is really called multiple sclerosis, multiple plaques, multiple lesions. You can actually have multiple and multiple and multiple lesions and only very minimal symptoms. Or you can have two lesions and a lot of disability. Before I continue, this is educational only. I'm not trying to substitute conventional medicine. I'm just giving you information that will hopefully help to reduce the fear of these MRI scans so that you realize it's not saying or needing to say certain things.
So my question is, why do the neurologists do MRIs if it's nothing to do with us?
From what I understand is before we did the lumbar punctures, right? Before there was lumbar punctures. And in lumbar puncture, it would show there is immune system activity in the central nervous system. If your immune system is coming to your hand, for example, it's because you've cut it. Your immune system is going to go in and do repairs. So if there's immune system in the central nervous system, something must be happening that needs repair. Before they did the lumbar puncture to find that. The thing is, lumbar punctures are not without risk, right? It's not a great thing to puncture the barrier towards the central nervous system. So when they began to be able to use MRIs, it was a way to not need to do lumbar punctures. Can you imagine having to do a lumbar puncture every year?
Oh, impossible, no.
Impossible. But MRIs aren't a big problem. So
Mm,
MRIs are indicating there's some immune system, there's swelling, like when you
mhm,
cut yourself, there is some swelling in the brain. But
mhm,
that's all you need to focus on. Yeah, there's some swelling in the brain. There's some repair going on in the brain.
mm.
But
Okay,
it
but
is not, it is not, yeah, sorry, it is not connected to which symptom, which lesion, etc.
I know, but I mean, it's very complicated for me to make the MRIs. It's long, it's stressing, it's a lot of things. So once I know that I have MS, why do I have to make MRIs in a 3 months pattern? I mean, okay, I know what do I have. Finish. No more MRIs, no more issues. Let me progress my illness and it's not required to make an MRI. I understand that the neurologists need to do the MRIs to check, recheck, and check again that you are in trouble. But I know I have been near 20 years with this issue. So why do I have to make MRIs in during these 20 years if they are not nothing to do with the real disease? Please don't make me more MRIs if they are not going to tell anything more than I know.
Good question. Good question. Good
Talk
question.
to your
Because
neurologist. Okay.
talk to your neurologist. Good question. Because also depending on, you saw that guy, depending on the moment of the year, of the week that you get the
Mm,
MRI, there's going to be
mm.
different activities. But hey, they will be able to say there is something going on in your central nervous system.
Okay. Thank you for the information.
Yes, that's why I wanted, but that's why I wanted to give you guys this information to downgrade because I always see my clients like, oh my gosh, I'm getting my MRI this week. And, maybe they're going to be able to tell me something. They're going to be able to explain why this
Mm,
side is happening. And it's like, no, that is not the
mm,
point of the MRI.
mhm,
Let it go. It's just showing them, yeah, yeah, there's some activity. But I have clients who have symptoms and it's been years since there's been any activity. And there's
mm,
clients that like aren't feeling anything. And
mm,
they're like, oh, look, there's a big one right there. And it's like, but I don't
mm.
feel anything. It's just
Okay.
showing inflammation.
Okay.
And it's
So,
just showing inflammation in the white matter area of the brain.
mhm. Okay.
So now we're going to take that information that's in your MRIs and we're going to do something totally out of the box. Okay? Totally unconventional. We're going to take that and we're going to use a different chart on it to actually do a different reading of what's going on. All right? So remember, this is educational only. I'm just showing you guys, hey, have you ever tried to put this on this and you can actually see things that you didn't know was there? Okay, so what we're going to use is a mind-body field called German New Medicine. It's not very known here in the United States, a lot in South America, very little in Germany. They've really, really cut the wings on there. But here in the United States, we can at least talk about it. As long as I don't diagnose you, I can talk to you about anything. So,
Okay.
German medicine comes from a guy named, or a gentleman named Dr. Reichgerd Hammer. He developed it when he was in his mid 40s. This is a oncologist. He at one point was in charge of the cancer department of the University of Munich. By the age of 40, he already had several patents for medical devices, and he was pretty much, living financially free because of these patents. So he was able to work in the slums of Italy and do research and stuff. Um, and in his mid 40s, unfortunately, his youngest child, Dirk, was shot. And for 3 months, think about this, he's a doctor and so is his wife. For 3 months, they had to witness his 17-year-old child trying to survive a gunshot. They had to amputate his leg. It was horrendous. He died 3 months later, and Dr. Hammer and his wife got sick. Dr. Hammer developed testicular cancer, which is a very rare kind of cancer, and his wife developed breast cancer. And you think about it, they are in their 40s. So, and they're very healthy. They're not stressed. They're living financially well. They were doing things they wanted to do because they weren't financially strapped. And this happened. So, Dr. Hammer knew there has to be a direct correlation between this shock, this pain, and what's happening in my body. Now, that's not new. This is, mind body medicine 101. Stress and traumas affect the body. That's known. But what isn't known and what he discovered is that, well, think about it. He was an oncologist. When he found that this happened, he actually went to other patients that also had testicular cancer. And again, testicular cancer is very rare. And he asked them specifically, did you have a traumatic loss? And they said, yes. And then what he did is he started grouping different cancers to find what conflict did they have and found that it wasn't just stress equals disease. It was this particular stress, this particular kind of shock creates this particular disease. And he did one more thing is when he was doing this study, he was studying the body, but he also studied the brain because he wanted to find how did the brain what happened in the brain in these shocks. And to his amazement, he found on your regular x-rays, because this was in the early 80s, these little like circular rays, these little circles. I'm going to show you what they look like on the x-rays in the exact same place, depending on the type of shock and depending on the type of cancer. So what he found is everyone who had the testicular cancer had this circle, and it's actually not a circle, it's a sphere. It's like it's not like a drop of water because that would be a ripple, but it's like a little explosion, right? And it's like, and he found that in every cancer had a particular relay, he called them, in the brain that is related to that organ and the tissue that changes during that conflict shock. First, he thought it was just for cancer, but later he also grouped different symptoms of other things, and he found the same thing. So he was actually able, let me actually show you here. No, here. Okay. He was actually able, remember I told you that like the ones that are MS is motor nerves, so it's your movement, and it's like a cap on the outside of your brain. This is the cap we're talking about. This is in the gray matter. He was able, and neurology has this, just not as specific as what he was able to, because of course he had a little dot. It was quite easy for him to do this, right? You got it in your finger, you're going to have a dot here. So he was able to do this for every single symptom, including all the ones that you are experiencing. So here's the map of motor cortex on the top of the brain. It's this area, this purple area here. And the sensory cortex, so numbing and tingling, is this area. This is the very top of the brain. And if you cut it, if you see here the cut on the right, if you cut it, this is the gray matter, and each one of these indicates the body part. So what happens is your body is going to decide when you have a conflict what body part and what organ is best can best respond to the shock. Because this is the thing. Another thing that Dr. Hummer concluded is that our bodies do not randomly break down, nor do they randomly attack itself. Instead, he offers a different explanation. He says that when a shock occurs, the body adapts. Okay, it adapts in order for you to survive whatever's happening. And this adaptation is going to affect the body part, the brain relay, and even psychologically, the best area of your person that'll help you survive. In his case, if you remember, he had testicular cancer. During testicular cancer, you grow more testes cells. When you grow more testes cells, you actually increase the amount of testosterone in the body. When you increase the amount of testosterone in the body, you are able to procreate more easily. So his body, in seeing that his son was dying and then died, jacked up his testosterone so that he could replace his, his son, his offspring, as quickly as possible. Now, it sounds kind of like, what? In humans, but think about this as a mouse. If a mouse has a litter of pups, and I don't know, there's a huge rain and all the pups get washed away, and the mouse is at a loss, all the pups have died, the mouse's body will actually create more cells in the mammary glands so that she has more estrogen, so that she is more fertile and can quickly replace that litter. So what Dr. Hammer concluded is that when we have a shock, something that goes on that just catches us off guard and we don't know what to do, our bodies kick in to create an adaptation to get us out of that. What do you think happens to that mouse once it's had its new litter? Is that cancer? We call it cancer. Is those prolific cells going to continue growing?
It doesn't need it anymore, no?
It doesn't need it anymore. And so once the survival need is complete, the body stops this adaptation. And then what happens is the body needs to break it down. And so how does the body break it down? Inflammation, microbes, bacteria, viruses, if those exist, it comes into the area to break down the adaptation. If you don't need it anymore, you don't need those extra cells. Or whatever that other adaptation is. MS is not extra cells. He called MS a cancer equivalent disease. but there is an adaptation that then needs to break down. Okay, this is a huge concept, so you might need to listen to this several times, and in these presentations, I do explain this several times because it's a very different way of seeing what's happening in your body. Now, there's a lot more you can learn about disease, and especially MS, using German new medicine, but today we're just going to focus on the brain, okay? Because in the same way as your organ adapts and then has to break down the adaptation, there's a change in the brain that then needs to be broken down. So I'm going to go back to that photo, but again, it's really pixeled because I actually have both. It's really hard to see here, but here, this is when the person is in conflict. Something just happens like, oh my God, what do I do here? And the body goes psst to start up the program. So it's actually a dark ring. When the program is done, when it's like, okay, the litter is, you have a new litter, the problem is resolved, the body also breaks down this ring. And that's what's happening in this photo. If you see here, the ring is kind of dark. Here, the ring is white and it's almost like spokes. You can see it here too, spokes of a bike. It also gets broken down. And that's how the relays of the brain, in the same way as the body, gets broken down. But let me ask you this. So again, I always say it's like when you cut yourself. You cut yourself, your body has to make an adaptation. Oh my gosh, the skin is open, it shouldn't be open. I need to, I need to create a change. Immune system comes in, brings in all the nutrients, creates a new, connection of the skin. Once it's done, the immune system leaves, right? But what happens if every 2 weeks I cut myself? What's going to happen?
Can stay there.
It's going to,
Darker, darker.
yeah, scarring. It's going to stay there. It's going to increase inflammation. And if it happens over and over and over, guess what? If it's in the white matter, it's going to show up on an MRI. Hint, hint, hint. So, if there is a conflict that happens often in areas of the body that the relays are in that white matter, in that central area, if it happens often enough, it's going to show up in your MRI. And that's what we're going to play with today. Because it turns out that 90% of people diagnosed with MS have lesions in that white matter. So some people have in spinal cord and but 90% have it in this central area. This central area of white matter, in German new medicine, we call it the new mesoderm. It's also the, there's another word for it too. Yeah, the cerebral medulla. It's the center.
So what kind of test can be done to see those circles if it's not the MRI?
It's a CT scan, your regular X-ray. As long as there's no contrast, there's no extra dye, anything that makes everything wonky, a plain old 1980s X-ray will show these rings. These rings, you can ask any X-ray specialist, you can ask a neurologist, they will tell you, oh, those are just machine errors of the X-ray machine. But if you ask a company that makes these, they will tell you it's not an error because it's a sphere. You cut different sections and that little ring will continue to appear. So on the MRI, you cannot see these relays. You can only see it on a plain old X-ray that has no dye or anything. But it will show when that circle has been over and over and over and over and over and over, that inflammation will get to the point that it will actually show up on the MRI. Okay, so now we're going to do, as I said, we're going to do some matching up, okay? What did Dr. Hammer discover was the type of shocks in that white matter, which 90% of people diagnosed with MS have, which 30% of people over 60 have, which 44% of people with migraine have, and 17.5% of people, normal people have. What he called, so before I call it, because it's a weird name, I'll just call it, he called it self-devaluation conflicts. That area of your body, so your brainstem responds to survival. It's like eat, drink, breathe, procreate. That's what all the organ tissues down here. The cerebellum is your protection. It's like we were amoeba, floating in the oceans. When the amoeba got out of the ocean, it needed protection. So everything that helps protect us, protect our organs, are in the cerebral medulla. The next area tissue that was grown was you get onto you get out of the water and you're an amoeba. What are you going to
Mm-hmm.
do? Not much, right? So we needed structure. So that area of the central brain is the area that is in charge of our structures, our bones, our ligaments, our joints, and our muscles. That's the area you can see in the MRI. Sticking to this area, these structures gave us the ability to go from A to B, the ability to make fire, the ability to hold. So it's all about our ability, and it's all about shocks in our abilities. I don't feel able. I can't do something I want to do. I don't feel enough, or I'm not a good enough, not a good mother, I'm not a good daughter. And a lot to do with self-judgment. Again, it's all about value. So it's a conflict of feeling devalued. Anyone here ever have conflicts of feeling devalued?
Yes, of course. Yes.
That's why the MRI shows those lesions. If it's showing those lesions, how often and for how long do you think you've had these little conflicts? Remember, it's not just you. Why do you think someone 60 years old having more of these conflicts? Twice as many as the general population.
Because they never figured out how to deal with their problems.
Yeah, they're beating themselves up. I can't believe I'm already 60 and I still haven't figured this out. Or maybe they were great at tennis. And look at athletes, right? By the 60, they're washed out, right? And so people at a certain age start having more conflicts around their abilities.
But there is a lot of persons with self-devaluation and they don't have MS. So,
No,
which is the point where
17.5%.
Okay, I have self-evaluation, but why I do have MS? Which is the
Because,
link?
because you also have conflicts in the motor nerves
Hmm.
or the sensory nerves. You
But
must
what do you
have,
mean with conflicts?
uh, s- so you must also have experiences and events, situations in your life
Okay.
where motor nerves is like you felt stuck. You
Okay.
couldn't get out of something. It's like if I do this, they're going to be mad at me. But if I don't do this, I'm going to be,
Yes.
frustrated.
Yes. Yes.
So a
Okay.
lot of stuck,
Okay.
trapped, a lot of pushing and can't, if I could just push through this.
Hmm.
And, or, because you can have either or, sensory, which is something that is so traumatic, you don't want to feel it. It's a relationship, something around a relationship that feels very traumatic, and either there's a loss and you just want to grab them, or you want to get so hell of away from them. You don't want to think about them, feel them, remember them, and that
Hmm.
your body will give you a numbing so you don't feel them. And where in the body? In the body part that's most related to them, that has something to do with them, or
So,
something to do with the conflict, with the event.
a quick question. I guess the question is, and I think this is what you were trying to ask, Angel or Angel. So why doesn't everyone have MS? If everybody has those flares in the MRI and everybody has all of that, why are only certain people have MS, but not everybody has it?
because not everybody has the combination of self-evaluation plus, and it has to be a lot of self-evaluation, not just a little bit, a lot. And it's interesting because the the kind of self-evaluation that is typical in MS is muscular. That's why after a long time, you might have muscle loss in a part of the body. Muscle is a mild self-evaluation. Bone is a severe self-evaluation. So it's mild, but constant, right? That's why there's this that constant beating yourself up. I remember one of my clients, she said her inner voice that was constantly putting her down or judging her, she called it Cruella de Vil, right? Because there's this constant, like, you're doing that wrong. What about that? All of you are going to be a little different. There's people that have a lot of inner critic. There's people that just have like this feeling like I'm not doing enough, so I need to do 110%, right? But the thing is that, as Angel said, I think this, if every single person out there got an MRI, which is what this study did, it's almost 1 in 5 people have this problem. 1 in 5 people have a mild, continuous, not feel good about themselves or feel they're enough. It's 1 in 5 in the general population, 1 in 3 over 60. So actually a lot of people have this one. However, you also need to have the nervous system, motor nerves, optic nerves, sensory nerves need to be giving you problems in a period of time, right? They need to test for that. Has it happened several times? Then and only then can they diagnose you.
So, in my understanding, I think that MS is having like a log, appending all the information of my body and all the things that it's happening to me. So, depending on if it is a very hard thing for me, see the MS, click, 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 and then at the end of the years, she has a lot of information from me where I am devaluated and my system is devaluated.
Yes. And so you're also describing progression. Why do you think having those other symptoms of MS, so whenever you feel stuck and your body's like, I have no way out,
Hmm.
let's not look at humans, let's look at our mice. If a mouse gets stuck, there is a cat in front of them and there's
Hmm.
a wall behind them, so they have no way out.
Hmm.
What will the body do as the adaptation to try to keep them safe?
Freeze.
Freeze, play dead, turn off the muscles. Because cats like to play with their prey. If the prey is dead, the cat's not interested, right?
Okay.
If you are having your muscles turned off or slightly off, which makes you clumsier, harder to move, do you think that's going to give you more self-evaluation? Do you think that
Yes.
might? Yes. So the symptoms, the nervous system symptoms, are actually making you beat yourself up more. So, on that note, I want to give you guys some, let's pivot into actually trying to do something about it. Okay? Because I don't want to give you guys more conflicts. You're going to beat yourself up for beating yourself up. Not the point today, right? Okay. So, let's play. All right. So as I said, on the CT scan, you can see the little centric, let me make it bigger. Okay, you can't see it. Great. Well, I can see it when it's really small. It's not the greatest photo. There's a little relay right here, okay? If we compare this, if we compare the CT scan to the map, this is Dr. Hammer's map of the new mesoderm, the cerebral medulla. It's almost like right where this area, it's several cuts, right with it, right this area. So this corresponds to his left pelvis. So if you look at the top of the brain, the right side of the brain actually controls the left side of the body. So we are looking here to an issue, a mild self-evaluation in the left pelvis area. So the muscles in that area. Okay. It might be the muscles, it might be the bones. This here we can't tell. In MS, it tends to be the muscles. Yes. We want to do
Wow.
something much more interesting though. I'm going to skip this guy. We want to look at our friend with the Christmas tree. Okay. Let's look at this big thing here on the bottom right. Look at the map on the right. What does this seem to match on Dr. Hammer's map? What do you think this area is matching?
The right knee?
The right knee?
Testicle. No?
Well, that's if it's inside. If it's way in here, it would actually be his testicle. It's almost centered. So
Oh.
it's a little bit out of the testicle. So the inside of these ventricles, it seems to be right on the edge of the ventricle. It's probably his right knee. I'm going to share with you guys what Dr. Hammer says about the right knee, or about the knee. Knees have to do with physical performance, like sportsmanship. They also have to do with feeling less mobile. I can't move forward. Or a conflict regarding, for example, submission or obedience, right? Like get on your knees in front of you like a king. So knees have to do with performance. So his conflict, what he's mildly beating himself up with, is his performance. So let's give an example. Let's say that he's beating himself up because he can't run anymore like he used to. Okay? That's what's causing these humongous, Price tries to do something and pow, he hits that self-evaluation of performance. What can he do here? Imagine he's your friend and he comes to you and he goes, darn it, I can't run like I used to run. I look like a duck. What would you tell him?
Give yourself some grace.
Hey, give yourself some grace. What else? You know that if he beats himself up, he's just going to create a Christmas tree.
Look at some other things that he's doing well.
Yeah. Look at some other things that he's doing well. Give yourself some grace. Patience, not the easiest thing, of course, right? Think about this. This area is called self-devaluation. Okay? It is marking the areas where he is struggling to meet values in a certain way. So, someone who likes to run, I would ask this client, for example, what is it about running that you value? What might he answer?
Freedom.
Freedom, nice. What else? What else might be some of the reasons he's, self-devaluing here? What might be some of the a value, what's important to him about running?
Health.
Health,
Time for himself.
time for himself,
The feeling of fulfillment he gets from it,
feeling of fulfillment.
the
Nice.
euphoria and the endorphins from the
Yep.
breathing, and there's a real lovely sense of euphoria from exercise.
So euphoria, right? Maybe his value is freedom. Each one of you has a value, right? Maybe his value is freedom. Maybe his value is health. Maybe it's time for himself or that sense of fulfillment. I wanted to do this and I did it, right? Especially if there's things going wrong in work. At least after work, I run and I feel like, okay, at least I did that, right? And euphoria. Is running the only way for him to achieve these things?
No.
No, probably the only way he knows how.
Exactly. So if he doesn't want to self-devaluate himself, because currently the only way he feels like he has time to himself, or the only way he feels he has freedom or he has fulfillment or that euphoria is running. So what would you suggest to him?
How else
Right.
can he achieve that?
How else can he achieve that? Yeah. Maybe if he starts cooking, it would be fulfilling, right? Does he need to be able to his knees perform for cooking?
Hmm.
Not
Maybe
really.
he could be a coach.
He could be a coach. Does his knee needs to perform amazingly to be a coach?
Mhm.
No, he wouldn't hit. He wouldn't fall over and over in that self-devaluation of his performance. So the importance is when you contrast your MRI image and find out the areas you have self-devaluation and contrast and see the shock, and I'm going to show it to you right now. Let me see. If that little white lesion is very close to your cervical spine, the upper part of the cervical spine, you probably have a self-devaluation conflict regarding your intellect. Maybe you feel like you're failing at some task intellectually, you keep making mistakes, or you've had those lovely condescending remarks by a teacher or a father that you're slow or you're stupid, right? And now you sell yourself that, right? Or if your issue is pelvis, it's probably a self-devaluation around your direction or your profession, sorry. It's like, oh, I don't know which way to go. I should already know by now. I'm 60, as I think Delmar said, I'm 60. I should already have figured out my life. Why don't I know, where I should be going? Who gets pelvis, their hip replaced?
Older people.
Older people that are beating themselves up, not mild self-devaluation that affects your muscles, but your bone because they're not happy with their direction. But let's go back to our little guy to play and become a little better at doing this. All right. Which one do we want to look at? This one up here? Ooh, look, there's one way out here. Where does that look like it shows?
Vertebra, cervical.
Yeah, way out here though. Do you see where my mouse is? It's like, wait,
Yes.
right now, right there,
So is it the
right?
right arm?
Yeah, it looks like it's way out. So the cervical is going to be midway, right? Midway from the center to the outside. That's all the cervicals. Well, cervical vertebrae. I see what you say. It's almost like,
Yes.
you know what? This little guy right, that one. Do you see that one right there? Not the
Yes.
longest one. So he does have cervical. What did we just say cervical was?
Vertebra. Ah, you mean
What was
from
the
the list?
conflict? Intelligence, feeling
Intelligence, right?
stupid, feeling,
Ah,
right? Sorry. So he's got that. What would you tell him? What's the value of intelligence? What might be what he values about being, intelligent or having the answer?
maybe that's what was important to his father or his parents.
So might that be a connection to his dad, for example, right? What he has in common with his dad. What else? What would be a value of being intelligent, of having the answers, of being smart? What's the value?
Financial stability,
Okay.
whatever. That's kind of personal, right?
It is. All of them are. All of them are. That's the thing. So Dr. Hammer could tell you what the conflict's about. But here, since we know it's about value, you need to ask yourself when you look at your MRI, and if you only have the text, most people just have a letter which says, I saw lesions in this area and this area of the frontal lobe. Ask them for the images. And then you can do the same exercises we're doing here.
Mhm.
And so you will see, okay, this is a self-evaluation about intelligence. Where do I beat myself up that I don't feel smart enough or I'm not getting it? And then step back. It's nice to do with someone. That's why we created the community, because it's nice to do it with someone else, is ask yourself, what is it I value? For me, sharing what I'm learning my values, this is my way of helping. And if for any reason I can't, like for the example, when I first started learning German new medicine, I was like, oh my gosh, how am I ever going to apply this? This is so much. I went through the same thing. I was like, I don't know if I'm going to teach this. This is just like crazy. Oh, well, I couldn't. I definitely had a lot of rigidity in my cervicals. I would wake up in the morning and my feet would be numb, and not numbing of the sensory, but numbing because there was so much pressure and inflammation in my cervix and probably in my head that I was cutting off my circulation, right? When I first started, because I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to know this. But is there some other way I can help people other than therapy?
Nursing, teacher,
Yeah,
or I guess not a teacher, but yeah,
I could
some other way of helping somebody.
Yeah, I could cook for you guys. Not that I know how. I had zero. Ask my sister. I do not cook. I could help in some other way. Or I could learn and do some other kind of help,
Hmm.
right? Let's find another one.
But you didn't. You kept going.
I kept going and I ignored the numbing. I didn't go and, get an MRI. I ignored because I knew exactly what was happening. And I knew I needed to get, feel helpful in other ways so that I wouldn't get so much pressure. And I did, other things, to help people.
So
Um,
would this guy just kind of surrender to the idea that he's not able to run and use his knee and just accept it for what is, and that would help him come out of the self-evaluation?
Self-evaluation, yes. So this is the thing that I propose to you guys. If many of you, like Angel, and you might call it quits when it comes to MRIs, if you guys are still yearly getting an MRI, this is my proposal to you. This is my crazy out of the box proposal to you. Figure out which self-evaluations you're running.
Hmm.
Performance, is it intelligence? Is it a finger? Let me remind the finger, especially like the ring finger, is about relationships, marriage, separation. Like figure out which is your self-evaluation. Step back, figure out what is it you value there, and then find a different way to fulfill the value so that you don't beat yourself up while your body is healing, because all you're doing is you're breaking the same wound over and over. And I would guess, and I might be wrong, but I don't think so, that if you do this and you focus on what is the value I have here, and you learn different skills or you do different things. I learned cooking, for example, and not only focus on my intelligence and my knowledge. If I learn different ways of fulfilling my value, the value of freedom, of health, time for himself, fulfillment, euphoria, financial stability, something in common with your dad, et cetera, find out your values and find another way to fulfill them. I bet you the next time you get the next MRI, that little white thing is going to have changed. That's my proposal. Any questions?
What about the motor conflict and the sensory conflict?
So the motor conflict and the sensory conflict, so the gray matter, we can't see it on an MRI.
Okay.
But
So we're just talking about self-evaluation conflicts.
so this is only for the this is only for the area that your neurologist insists on testing every single year. And you get to surprise the heck out of them. And it will help you too by focusing on that area and going, you know what? Even if I can't run, there is trillion ways of having freedom. And I'm going to practice them this year. And the next time I get that MRI, we're going to see what's going on in that particular circle. That's my proposal to you. Because it's a mild self-evaluation that's showing up there. It's just constant. Elise?
I'm one of those people that stopped doing MRIs for various reasons that some of you may share. And I stopped it in 2016. So what's the relevance of looking at a 10-year-old MRI?
They'll give you 10-year-old information.
Yeah. The second is the areas of your body in which your muscles are reducing,
Mhm.
where like the left leg is significantly thinner than the right leg. That is continuous self-evaluation of the muscle. And so you can take the same chart, you can work there. Okay, this muscle has to do with
So what you're saying is that it's not only necessarily what's going on in your brain. There's that physical
yes.
representation of what's happening inside, what your devaluation is. You're just trying to say that in the MRI, you can also find it.
Yes. That's why today we're just looking at MRIs. But in German medicine, you can look at an MRI, you can look at the body symptom, and you can even look at the stressor. I'm stuck. I feel so stuck. I'm so stressed because I feel like I can't do this and I don't have any exit. That's a motor conflict, active motor conflict, right? I don't want to think about this. I don't want to think about this person. No, that'll be more of a sensory. Like you can tell. You can't tell so much on the well, you can't tell on psychologically as well. But once it starts healing, you can't tell. Psychological has just disappeared. It's not an issue. But here in the brain, that's why I want to do the presentation today. Those MRIs, you can actually utilize them and read them